Okay, your resident Gemini, Maria Rieger here with another astrology video. This time we're going to be talking about the basics of interpreting a birth chart, and we're going to be talking about the big three, which are the three most significant elements in interpreting a birth chart. It's going to be a high level overview. We don't really have time to get into all the nuts and bolts of the birth chart. Those will be in subsequent videos. So let's get started. First, I wanted to say the way I think about astrology is it's largely the study of the individual birth chart, and you can certainly use it to look at relationship compatibility and things like that between two people. And other astrologers do use it to study events and things like that, even predictive astrology. To me, astrology is largely the study of the individual birth chart, and it is largely, or at least I use it largely as a tool for self knowledge, self discovery, and self learning. It's one more tool, could be potentially one more tool in your arsenal of self discovery along this journey, such as MBTI, Enneagram, psychotherapy, self help books, Codependence Anonymous, all of those tools. Astrology, the way I see it, astrology is another tool in your arsenal of self discovery. It can teach you, looking at your birth chart, can teach you how you deal with life, how you deal with relationships, areas you can improve on, your tendencies, your triggers. So I think it can be very helpful. And in my kind of specialized area that I like to focus on, I like to focus on parent child relationships because I see a lot of what I call parenting from a place of ego, where the parents a lot of the times see the children as extensions of themselves, as opposed to separate individuals with their own preferences, wants, and needs that do things differently from the parents. And that becomes difficult when the children start to grow up and exhibit increasing independence, which is totally normal. Sometimes parents kind of work against that. So the area I like to focus on is kind of understanding your child through astrology and strengthening the parent-child relationship through astrology. On that note, a shameless plug, my book on Gemini children will be out in May or June of this year. Very excited about that. I'm working on finalizing it now. So that's something to look forward to. You can go to Goodreads, put it on your to-read list if you like. So let's get started. I have up here, you've been looking at it for a few minutes, a sample anonymous birth chart. It's not mine. It's an anonymous birth chart we're going to use to kind of talk about birth chart basics. So when you're looking at the birth chart, you want to look at the sign placement, and house placement of the planets. The birth chart is a snapshot of the position of the planets at the moment of your birth. You need your date of birth, place of birth, and time of birth to the minute if possible, because certain elements in the birth chart change very quickly. So you really need to pinpoint birth time as precisely as possible to get an accurate chart. You can use different websites, different software to get a birth chart. So the format will be generally similar, but the symbols may look a little different. The color scheme may look a little different. I use astro.com. I like the format. Just know that if you use different websites or software, the symbols and whatnot, the color scheme will look a little different. But generally, it's the same format. So you see the position, the planets. So all these symbols, right? Moon, sun, represent the planets. We have a couple kind of planetary bodies that are not planets. Chiron is an asteroid right here. I'm going to use the coloring tool. There we go. Chiron is right here. If I can do a circle, kind of. It's an asteroid. Like I said, this is the north node, planetary body. It's not a planet, right? And the rest, this person has their planets congregated in the right side of the chart, which is kind of unusual. But so you're going to find the planets, you're going to find the sign position and the house position of the planets. And here is how you do that. I don't trip over my tongue, as we Geminis are wont to do much of the time. So you'll see, starting with Aries right here, the 12 signs around this outer wheel. So Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. 12 signs. And then you have 12 houses. See these numbers here? So first through 12th house. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. So first of all, you want to find the planets and their sign positions. So let's use, yeah, it's fine, Cap. So see this line here, from this line here to this line here denotes Capricorn. So any planets that fall between those two lines are in the sign of Capricorn. This person has their Neptune in the sign of Capricorn, the only planet in Capricorn in this chart. Okay? Over here, you have Sagittarius, goes all the way here. This person has a few planets in Sagittarius. Actually, it looks like Saturn is in Scorpio. It's an interesting placement, especially for the 6th house. So this person has this Uranus and Mercury in Sagittarius. Okay, so that's how you find the sign positions of the planets. Okay, so how you find the house position, you've got these lines here, right? So for example, from this line, if I can draw a straight line to this line, that denotes the 8th house. So any planets between those two lines fall in the 8th house. This person has no planets in the 8th house. Between this line and this line, you have number 7, the 7th house. That this person has two planets in the 7th house. So that's how you find that. Okay. What do the signs and the houses mean? It would take a long time to go over in detail what they mean. So I'm going to borrow, to give you a high-level description, I'm going to borrow the words of a very well-known astrologer, Stephen Arroyo. He's a relationship astrologer. He's an air sign. He's a Libra. Libras are relationship-oriented, so it's no surprise he's a relationship astrologer. Also being an air sign, he's very analytical, and he uses a lot of data in developing his conclusions about astrology. He conducts a lot of surveys, looks at studies, and extrapolates the data and draws his own conclusions. Very data-driven astrologer. And most professional astrologers are very data-driven. We conduct surveys and look at studies and then use the data from that to kind of formulate patterns, establish patterns, and then look at the data. I'm a corporate attorney by day. That's my day job. I'm a lawyer. So it's not exactly a job you would think that a day job that you would think an astrologer would have, but it is what it is. So this is kind of a nice balance to that day gig. So I showed you how to find the sign position and house position of the planets. So what do they mean? So Stephen Arroyo says the planets in your chart, right? The planets are energies. The sign position of the planets, the sign represents how you personally express the energies of the planet, depending on what signs the planets are in your chart. And the houses represent fields of experience. Now, you'll notice there are 12 signs and 12 houses. Each house is associated with a sign. Each house is not equated with a sign, not the same, but it's associated with a sign. So, for example, the 8th house is associated with Scorpio. The 7th house is associated with Libra. So while the planets represent, or the signs represent, how you express the planetary energies, the houses represent the areas that will be emphasized in your life. So the 7th house is the house associated with Libra. It's the house of representing the areas of one-to-one relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, business partnerships could be. So if you have planets in the 7th house, the more those areas of your life will be important to you. The more planets you have in that house, the more the areas of that house will be emphasized, if that makes sense. So that's another tool, kind of when you interpret a chart, you can tell what to ask the chart holder about, what to talk to them about based on the number of planets in their house, what areas are important to them, right, in their life. So that's that. So to take an example here, this person has, what is that, 5 planets in the 6th house. So the sign position of many of these planets is Scorpio. And the 6th house is the house associated with Virgo. The 6th house represents the areas of day to day life, chronic illness, and your day to day job, but not necessarily the vocation you have in life or what you're passionate about. It's more kind of the day to day job you have to pay the bills. For example, I know a person who has a lot of planets in her 6th house, and she had scoliosis all throughout her childhood. That's something that you would expect to see with kind of chronic illness like that, with a person who had a lot of planets, especially personal planets, in the 6th house. So you know that the day to day work, day to day life, possibly chronic illness, will be areas that will be emphasized in this person's life. This person also has two personal planets, the moon and Mars, in the 5th house. The 5th house is the house associated with Leo. The 5th house represents children, stuff that's fun, amusements, and also gambling. So I would think that this person probably has children or wants to have children. And also, they probably like to have fun. Although it's interesting because this person I would think is a serious person, that's probably has trouble being lighthearted because they've got all the Scorpio placements plus those 6th house placements. But we don't want to get too detailed in the interpretive part today. So we've talked about the kind of the main areas you want to focus on in the chart, right? How to identify what signs the planets are in, what houses the planets are in. So I want to talk to you about the 3 most significant aspects in the birth chart. And those will kind of color a lot of the interpretation of the chart when you start to read charts. So the first one is the sun sign, obviously, and everybody or almost everybody knows their sun sign. Sun is right here in this chart, kind of that circle within a circle, right? So sun sign, basically, I mean, as long as you know your date of birth, you know your sun sign. This person has his or her sun in Scorpio. So the sun sign represents kind of your ego, will, your desire, what motivates you. It illuminates everything in the chart. So it colors and has an effect on everything else in the chart. It's hard not to, right? That's what the sun does. It illuminates everything, right? So some notes here. So I'm going to read to you from very well-known astrologer Robert Hand says that the sun is kind of the active, energizing principle of the rest of the chart. It kind of gives impetus to the rest of the chart. It's kind of signifies what drives you to achieve things and accomplish things. It represents ego, will, like we said, desire. It seeks, Robert Hand also says, the sun seeks room for the greater expression of itself. So it's always trying to kind of exert its kind of will and ego out in the world. And the sun sign, your sun sign will tell you how you do that. For example, my sun sign is Gemini. So I see things from a very logical, clinically detached point of view. I'm very rational. I want to understand things. Kind of my first line of reaction is to understand and to analyze, to make mental connections. The person in this chart, their sun sign is in Scorpio. Scorpio's first line reaction is to feel. They feel very deeply, to be emotive, and also to hear my dogs barking in the background. It's impossible to keep them quiet. And Scorpio's first line of reaction is to feel deeply, and also to empathize. They tend to have, they don't always show it, they tend to have empathy, great empathy with people. So more so, they come from a place of emotion and feeling rather than logic, right? So that's kind of the difference. But everything about the sun sign will color the rest of the chart. So you always have to take that into consideration. What else? Sun sign shows how you navigate life, how you deal with life, kind of your view of the world. So it's really hard to discount the importance of the sun sign. But it's not the only significant aspect of the birth chart. The moon sign is also very important. So this person has the moon right here, like we talked about earlier. The moon is in the sign of Virgo in the fifth house. That's a challenging placement because, like we talked about earlier, Virgo is very serious. And here you have the moon in the fifth house, which is the house of fun and amusements and like doing things for fun. So I would imagine this person probably has harder time being lighthearted. So the moon is very important because it really represents, among other things, kind of how you behave in relationships. The moon represents your emotional life, what you need to feel emotionally comfortable and emotionally satisfied, emotionally fulfilled, how you recharge your batteries, how you fulfill your emotional needs, basically how you subconsciously respond to anything that touches on or triggers your emotions. So it has a lot to do, the moon will tell you a lot about how you act at home in your home life and how you act in relationships, romantic relationships and family relationships. So we talked about this person's placement, moon placement. This person probably is emotionally fulfilled by dealing with uh, children, right? Either spending time with their own children or thinking about having children or whatnot. My moon sign, my moon rather, is in my fourth house, which is the house of home and family, private life. So I kind of recharge my batteries, if you will, by being at home and kind of being alone, being private. So it'll tell you a lot about how you behave in your home life. So it's very important when you're looking at your compatibility with another person, whether the moons are compatible. That's very important. Oftentimes, if you're comparing two people's, like a couple's chart, two people's chart, they're in a romantic relationship. Often, even if the sun signs are not compatible, super compatible energies, if the moon signs are compatible and kind of well placed one to another, oftentimes the relationship will function pretty well because they can kind of come together, use the moon's energy of the moon sign to kind of come together and agree on a lot of things. If they behave similarly at home and in relationships, kind of that kind of bodes well for the relationship, right? So, because you spend so much time with that person you're in a relationship with. So, I really cannot understate the importance of the moon sign, especially when looking at relationship compatibility. Another thing I want to bring up about the moon sign is that often people have told me they really don't connect or identify with their sun sign too much. And why is that? Well, if that's the case, the first thing I would suggest will be to look at your moon placement. And it's possible that your moon sign is in a sign that has a completely different energy than the sun sign. And that means it's harder to respect and honor the energies of both, right? That's my situation. I'm a Gemini sun and I have a Capricorn moon, and my moon is always pushing me to work and be productive. And my sun sign is pushing me to just relax and have fun and just sit and read a book or take a trip and travel. So it's difficult to kind of honor both the energies because they're so different. But you still need to do that. You still need to honor both energies. You need to make time. In my case, I need to make time for productivity and make time for fun. I need carrots. That's what my sister says. I need carrots. I need things to look forward to if I'm going to be so productive and like, workaholic, right? So that's something to be aware of. So look at your birth chart, look at your moon placement. That may, you may be surprised, and you may actually end up identifying more with the moon sign. So the last element we want to talk about today is the rising sign. And it's not a planetary body per se, so you find it right here. It is the sign that was coming out of the darkness over the horizon into sunlight at the moment you were born. So this angle right here is called the ascendant. That's what we're talking about. The AC, the ascendant, the rising signs, all the same thing. Okay. We'll talk about the other angles in another video. That would take too long if we included all that information today. And I'm a Gemini. We don't have that much patience, and you probably don't either to watch a 3 or 4 hour video. So the ascendant or rising sign is right here. So this is the first house. That line and this line, okay, delineates the first house. So the house starts in the sign of Gemini, So this person has a Gemini rising sign. Okay, so what is the rising sign? So the rising sign is how you automatically project yourself to the outside world, how you subconsciously and automatically and spontaneously present yourself to the outside world. It represents one of your main biases in life. It's different from the sun sign because the rising sign, it's not about intention. It's about just how you automatically put yourself out there. The sun sign is more about will, desire, intention. Okay, that masculine driven energy. The rising sign is less about that, but it does represent one of the main biases in your life. So this person is a Gemini. This person probably, when he or she interacts with the world, with other people, probably presents him or herself as gregarious and outgoing and kind of very mentally active. But that's not, if that's all you saw of that person, you would not get the entire picture because this person is a Scorpio sun. So he or she feels very deeply and has a lot of private thoughts that he or she won't share with other people. So it's interesting when you have those energies in the chart that are so different. You may have a completely different picture of a person, and as opposed to how they really are, like at home and in private. So some people explain their rising sign by being kind of the superficial veneer. I don't like to explain it like that because I don't think it's accurate. It is part of the person, right? But it's a different, the way you express the energy of a rising sign is different than how you would express the energy of your sun sign. So I hope that's clear. A rising sign can be hard to articulate, but that's the gist of it. So that's what we wanted to cover today. I hope that was helpful. Please look at your charts, look at the charts of friends and family members. The way you get better at reading birth charts is to do more birth charts and talk to the chart holder about their life, right? Stephen Arroyo has a great book called Handbook for Chart Interpretation. It's more of an intermediate book than a beginner book. But after you start looking at birth charts and whatnot and you feel more comfortable with them, that's a great book to pull out and look through. He's great. So anyway, that's all we have time for today. My next video will be on Pisces children. I know we're in Aries season already, so we're a little bit behind schedule. We'll do a video on Pisces children, then a video on Aries children, and then I'll be working on my book on Gemini children. So thank you for watching and take care, everybody.